15 doctors at the hospital failed to save the billionaire. Then the 14-year-old son of a cleaning lady, an unrecognized medical prodigy, saw what no one else did. Another morphine dose, now, barked Dr. Peterson as alarms shrieked in the luxurious private suit. Tech magnate William Cross was slipping away, while the nation's top specialist stood powerless. Just outside, Kevin mopped the corridor in practiced motions, though his gaze stayed fixed on the monitor screens visible through the half-open door. At only 14, the hospital felt more like home than his own house. For 3 years he had accompanied his mother Diane on late shifts ever since she took the janitorial job to support the family. "Kevin, stop staring." "Come help me," Diane whispered, tugging gently at his sleeve. "We can't afford to draw attention." But Kevin couldn't look away. For 2 weeks, he had tracked Cross's every symptom, every test, every drug, and something didn't add up. The clinical picture simply didn't match the diagnosis the doctors clung to. "Doctor," Peterson stormed out, his face flushed, followed by 4 other elite physicians. "Impossible," he muttered to Dr. Williams. 15 of the best in the country, and we still can't stabilize him. The symptoms defy logic. "Maybe some obscure syndrome," Dr. Williams offered, adjusting his pristine coat. "Something only European journals mention." Kevin balled his fists. They were chasing exotic mysteries while ignoring the obvious. In 3 years wandering hospital corridors, he had devoured discarded medical textbooks, memorized procedural manuals thrown away, and observed countless surgeries through observation windows. His mother often said he was different. While other kids mastered video games, Kevin memorized encyclopedias. Different here, though, meant unseen. The black son of a cleaner had no place in medical debate. "Mum," Kevin whispered, "I know what's wrong with Mr. Cross." "They're treating him all wrong." Diane froze, pride and fear flickering across her face. "Kevin, sweetheart, you're gifted. But this isn't. 5th cranial nerve involvement, progressive motor loss, but clean neurological tests." Kevin pressed on. "They're chasing brain disorders. They should be testing for poisoning." Diane's eyes widened. She knew that tone. Her son wasn't guessing. He was certain. And that certainty frightened her. Inside the conference room at the end of the hall, the doctors argued behind closed doors. But Kevin knew the hospital's secrets. From the vents he cleaned, he could hear every word. "We're wasting precious time." Peterson thundered, slamming the table. "We've tried antivirals, cutting-edge antibiotics, even experimental therapy. Nothing's working." Williams rifled through files in despair. "Tests remain inconclusive. Perhaps we should transfer him to Johns Hopkins." "Unthinkable," Peterson snapped. "If 15 specialists here can't solve it, no one can." Kevin shook his head. Pride was blinding them. Their arrogance was killing Cross. Returning to the suite, Kevin studied the patient. Cross was deteriorating fast. Tremors, dilated pupils, ragged breathing. Kevin recognized the pattern. 3 years earlier, when he was only 11, a man had been admitted with identical symptoms. That man had died. But the autopsy revealed mercury poisoning. The memory had seared into Kevin's mind, the gradual tremors, the creeping confusion, the clean neurological scans that fooled everyone. "Kevin?" Diane hissed as she pushed her cart past. "Don't linger. The doctors are already on edge." But Kevin couldn't move. He watched a nurse inject another dose of the very medication he knew was useless. "Mum," he whispered urgently, pulling her aside. "They're giving him iron chelate. But if it's mercury, he needs penicillamine or D-mercapryl." Diane's throat tightened. "Are you absolutely sure?" "Completely," Kevin said, eyes blazing. "It's just like Timothy Walsh 2020 room 3-12. Tremors, confusion, normal MRI, classic methylmercury." Diane stared. Not only the symptoms, but the name, year, and room number, all stored in his mind like a living database. "How do you remember all this?" she asked, though she already knew. "Because I read everything, Mom. Every misplaced record, every discarded manual, every journal left behind. Being invisible lets me learn without being noticed." Just then, Peterson emerged from the conference room, exhausted and furious. Kevin gathered his courage and stepped forward. Peterson," he said steadily, "you need to test Mr. Cross for mercury poisoning." The doctor halted as if struck. "Excuse me." "The symptoms are textbook." Kevin pressed. "Progressive tremors, confusion, normal MRI. Identical to Walsh in 2020. "Young man," Peterson replied with a thin, patronizing smile, "medicine is not a child's game. Walsh died of pneumonia." "No, sir," Kevin insisted, voice rising. "He died of mercury poisoning." I read the autopsy report myself, in the trash outside your office. The smile drained from Peterson's face. You rummage through medical waste. That violates protocol. I don't rummage, Kevin said quietly. I clean. And while I clean, I observe. And when I observe, I learn. Around them, nurses and doctors paused, watching the exchange unfold. A 14-year-old black boy, the cleaner's son, was openly challenging the official diagnosis. Security, Dr. Peterson thundered. Get that boy and his mother off my floor now. Diane hurried forward, her cheeks flushed with shame and fear. Kevin, what have you done? As pretending to be a doctor, Peterson announced loudly enough for everyone in the corridor to hear, basing wild claims on garbage from the hospital bins. A ripple of cruel laughter spread through the hallway. Each smirk and sneer cut Kevin like a blade, but he refused to flinch. He had learned long ago that weakness only fed predators. Dr. Peterson, Kevin said evenly, his calmness surprising even his mother. If you don't test for mercury within the next 12 hours, William Cross will die, and you'll have to explain to his family why you ignored the possibility. The physician's face turned crimson. Is that a threat? It's an observation, Kevin replied, locking eyes with the man who was 3 times his age and armed with a wall full of degrees. An evidence-based observation you've chosen to dismiss. Security arrived, ready to remove Kevin and Diane, but before they could act, a shrill alarm cut through the air. William Cross had gone into violent convulsions. Doctors surged into the room, struggling to stabilize the billionaire. Kevin leaned close to his mother. 12 hours, Mom. If they don't test for mercury, we'll have to take matters into our own hands. Diane stared at her son. In his young eyes burned a resolve that terrified her as much as it filled her with pride. Kevin wasn't just a gifted boy. He was a mind sharpened by years of invisibility, absorbing knowledge from the shadows. Now, for the first time, he was stepping into the light, armed with truths too powerful to be ignored. The doctors had underestimated him. That mistake might cost William Cross his life, and destroy their reputations forever. For hours after the seizure, tension pulsed through the hospital like electricity. Kevin peered through the round glass window in the door, watching as 15 physicians circled the billionaire's bed, their faces masks of barely concealed despair. We're losing him, Dr. Williams muttered to Peterson. His decline is accelerating. If we don't identify the cause soon. I don't want to hear defeatism. Peterson snapped, slicing the air with his hand. Why are the best in the country? And I won't be lectured by some street kid pretending to know medicine. The words hit Kevin like a slap, but he held on to his composure. Anger without strategy was useless. He had spent years cultivating invisibility in these halls, slipping past notice, listening, learning. That was his weapon now. While the doctors chased hopeless theories, Kevin slipped away like a shadow. His destination, the hospital library, where he had consumed every toxicology text he could find. But tonight he needed something more precise. Kevin, a gentle voice called. He turned to see Dr. Jennifer Chun, a third-year resident who had always treated him and his mother kindly. She eyed the toxicology emergency manual in his hands. What are you doing here? I heard about the scene with Dr. Peterson. Kevin glanced around, ensuring they were alone. Degra, Chun, can I trust you? Surprised by his formality, she nodded. Of course, Kevin. What's going on? Cross is being poisoned with mercury, he said bluntly. The symptoms are identical to Timothy Walsh in 2020. Progressive tremors, mental fog, normal MRI. They're giving him the wrong chelator. He needs penicillamine or dimercaprol. Duck. Chun studied him, silent for a long moment. At 26, she still remembered what it felt like to be dismissed by older physicians. Kevin, are you absolutely certain? 100%. He flipped to the exact page in the manual, pointing to the list of symptoms. Look, it matches perfectly. And I think I know how the mercury's entering his system. Leaning in, Chun scanned the text, impressed by the accuracy of his reasoning. How could you possibly know all this? By reading. By watching. By listening when people thought I wasn't there, Kevin said quietly. When you're invisible, you learn everything no one thinks to hide. In 3 years, I've absorbed more medicine than many residents. Chun's expression softened. What do you need me to do? I need access to Cross's complete medical records from the last 3 months, plus a list of visitors and every personal item he uses daily, Kevin said, his eyes gleaming with intensity. And I need your help collecting evidence, without Peterson finding out. As they spoke, Kevin laid out his theory. Cross was being poisoned systematically through everyday items. His imported toothpaste, his aftershave, his painkillers. Any one of them could be laced with organic mercury. The absorption would be subtle but deadly. Chun's pulse quickened. If you're right, this isn't just poisoning. It's attempted murder. Exactly, Kevin said. That's why I need proof. Peterson humiliated me once. Next time I'll have evidence he can't ignore. Suddenly a nurse sprinted past. Emergency in Cross's room. He's seizing again. Kevin and Dr. Chun rushed back. Inside, chaos reigned. Cross's body shuddering with intermittent seizures, his skin an alarming grey monitors screaming instability. 50 more milligrams of diazepam. Peterson barked. Increase the iron chelator dosage. Dr. Peterson. Chun began carefully. Maybe we should consider alternate possibilities. His symptoms aren't responding. Dega, Chun. Peterson cut her off coldly, his glare sharp as glass. I hope you're not being swayed by that boy's fantasies. Medicine isn't a democracy. Experience trumps childish guesses. From the doorway, Kevin's fists clenched. Every wasted minute drained Cross's life. Enough was enough. When the nurses rotated shifts, Kevin seized his chance. Quiet as a shadow, he slipped into the billionaire's suit. With swift precision, he photographed every personal item: aftershave, toothpaste, pills, even the imported soap. Then his heart skipped. The toothpaste, its color was faintly off, an almost metallic silver shimmer. Using a small lab spatula from the bathroom, Kevin scraped a sample into a container he'd lifted from the lab. What do you think you're doing? The voice was cold, authoritative. Kevin froze, then turned slowly. Dr. Peterson stood in the doorway, 2 security guards flanking him. Collecting evidence, Kevin answered, calm and steady. Evidence. Dr. Peterson laughed, dismissive. Kid, you're delusional. Security, remove this minor and bring his mother here. I'll be notifying administration about disciplinary action. Before the guards could move, Dr. Chun appeared in the doorway. Dr. Peterson, maybe we should at least hear what the boy has to say, she suggested. Cross is deteriorating rapidly under the current regimen. Peterson's eyes blazed. If she keeps backing this circus, her career here may be on the line, he snapped. Kevin stepped forward, the small vial cradled in his hand. In 12 hours, he said, looking Dr. Peterson in the face, Mr. Cross will be dead if you keep treating him this way. But if you run a mercury test on this sample, you'll find lethal levels. That's absurd, Peterson declared. Still, Kevin caught the faintest flicker of doubt in her voice. Then run the test. Kevin challenged, extending the container. If I'm wrong, I'll never question a medical diagnosis again. And if you're right? Peterson asked, dripping sarcasm. Kevin met her gaze, speaking with a confidence that hushed the room. If I'm right, you'll have to explain how a 14-year-old saved a billionaire whom 15 top specialists could not. All that filled the silence were the rhythmic beeps of Cross's monitors. Peterson glanced from the sample to Kevin to Dr. Chun, who watched with growing curiosity. Fine, she said at last, irritation and curiosity mingling in her tone. We'll run the test. But if it comes back negative, I want him and his mother off the premises permanently. Kevin allowed himself a small, knowing smile, the kind that carried the weight of long study and steady conviction. I accept, he replied. But you should start drafting your statement for the press. How the hospital nearly lost the country's most famous billionaire because of medical pride. Peterson left, the sample in hand, uneasy but committed to the assay. Kevin whispered to Dr. Chun, the interesting part is what happens after it comes back positive. Then we'll discover who is trying to kill Cross. I already have my suspicions. Chun looked at him with rising respect. How did you get so knowledgeable? She asked. When society makes you invisible, you learn to see what others miss. Kevin replied, watching through the window as Peterson argued with colleagues down the hall. What I've seen these last 3 years prepared me for this moment. The test would take 2 hours. Kevin intended to use every minute to gear up the next stage of his plan. Proving mercury poisoning was only the beginning. Unmasking the perpetrator and their motive would be the real measure of his skill. As Cross writhed under the poison's effects, Kevin's resolve hardened. 15 celebrated physicians had failed not for lack of data, but for a lack of humility. In the next 2 hours he would show that wisdom can come from the most unlikely places, and that dismissing someone for their age, race, or class can be deadly. 2 hours and 17 minutes later, Dr. Peterson returned with a look Kevin would never forget. The result was positive organic mercury at lethal concentrations, just as Kevin had insisted. Positive for organic mercury poisoning. Peterson announced to the assembled team, her voice like broken glass. Concentration, 2.4 parts per million in the toothpaste. Only the monitor's beeps broke the stunned silence. 15 eminent specialists stared at Kevin as if they'd witnessed a miracle or a ghost. Begin treatment with dimercapril immediately. Kevin said calmly, addressing Peterson. 50 milligrams per pound intramuscularly, every 4 hours. Peterson opened her mouth to argue, and then closed it. To contest him now would be to admit publicly that she had failed. Kevin wasn't done. Have you checked who has routine access to Mr. Cross's personal items? He asked. That's for the police. Peterson replied defensively. Actually, Kevin said, pulling out his phone, I've already identified the likely culprit. All eyes turned to the boy who was about to expose not only a poisoning but an attempted murder. For 3 weeks I logged Cross's visitors. Kevin explained methodically. Only 3 people had regular access to his belongings, head nurse Sandra Williams, his personal assistant David Foster, and his ex-wife Rebecca Cross. He swiped to a photo on his phone. Only one visitor was present exactly 3 hours before each episode. He held up the image. Rebecca Cross. She was the one who consistently brought unusual gifts, including the imported organic toothpaste. Peterson frowned. How do you have this information? While you debated unlikely syndromes, Kevin said, I was documenting patterns. Rebecca Cross visited William every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 3 weeks. Kevin explained. On Thursdays, she always brought him personal care products, claiming they were organic and healthier for his sensitive condition. Dr. Chun stepped closer, visibly impressed. Kevin, how on earth did you connect all of this? A billionaire's divorce, Kevin said plainly, is really a battle over inheritance. Cross is worth $4.2 billion. If he died of so-called natural causes before revising his will, Rebecca would walk away with 80% of the fortune. As if fate had timed it perfectly, Rebecca Cross swept into the room at that exact moment, carrying an elegant pharmacy bag. William, darling, she cooed sweetly, I brought your favorite products. That special toothpaste you love. Mrs. Cross, Kevin interjected politely. Could you tell us where you purchased these items? Rebecca's eyes narrowed in irritation. And you are. I'm Kevin, he said evenly. The one who just saved your ex-husband's life, after uncovering that someone has been lacing his hygiene products with organic mercury. Her face drained of color. The bag in her hand trembled. That's absurd, she stammered. I would never. Mum, Kevin pressed on, his voice relentless. You've been an industrial chemist for 15 years. Through your consulting work with a pharmaceutical company, you have direct access to organic mercury. And curiously, Mr. Cross suffers seizures exactly 6 hours after your visits. Dr. Peterson stood frozen, torn between horror and awe. The boy wasn't just diagnosing an illness. He was conducting a live criminal investigation. This is ridiculous, Rebecca muttered, trying and failing to steady her hands. I love William. I would never hurt him. Kevin pulled out his phone, swiping through photos. Here you are yesterday, purchasing toiletries at the downtown pharmacy, and here. He swiped again, entering Meridian Chemical Laboratory on Monday, where you consult and where organic mercury is stored. How did you? Rebecca began, then caught herself, realizing she was incriminating herself further. Because I pay attention, ma'am, Kevin said quietly. When you're invisible, you learn to notice the patterns others ignore, and the pattern here is crystal clear: an ambitious ex-wife, armed with chemical knowledge and financial motive, slowly poisoning her ex-husband to inherit billions. Dr. Peterson finally found her voice. Security, call the police. The bag slipped from Rebecca's hands, products spilling across the floor. The farce aid of the doting ex-wife collapsed, leaving only raw desperation. You can't prove anything, she shouted. It's his word against mine. Kevin's smile was calm, the same unshakable confidence he'd shown when Peterson had humiliated him hours earlier. Actually, ma'am, I can prove it. He turned the phone screen toward her. I recorded everything, your visits, your purchases, even. He paused for effect. Even you slipping something into his toothpaste yesterday when you thought no one was watching. The silence was suffocating. Impossible, Rebecca whispered. No one was in the hallway. I was. Kevin said, cleaning the adjacent room with the door slightly ajar. Perfect angle, perfect recording. Rebecca's knees buckled. She leaned against the wall, realizing her flawless plan had unraveled at the hands of someone she hadn't even noticed existed. Peterson looked at Kevin with a mixture of awe, regret, and humility. In less than 24 hours, this boy had diagnosed what 15 specialists had overlooked, exposed the culprit, and secured enough evidence for an arrest. "Kevin," Peterson said softly, her voice thick with emotion, "you didn't just save Cross's life. You cracked what might have been the perfect crime." Rebecca Cross was led away in handcuffs as William Cross, already improving under the correct treatment, stabilized. Kevin stood silently in the corner watching. At just 14, he had proved what arrogance tried to deny, that genius knows no color, no age, no social rank. In that hospital room once ruled by pride disguised as expertise, a new truth had taken root. Wisdom can flourish in the unlikeliest places, especially when society does its best to erase it. 6 months later, Kevin walked those same hospital corridors in a crisp white coat embroidered with his name, Kevin Beaumont, junior medical consultant. At 15, he was the youngest consultant in the hospital's history, balancing part-time work with accelerated medical studies on a full scholarship. Dr. Peterson, once his fiercest critic, now greeted him with wary respect. Her arrogance had been forced into humility. After all, explaining how a teenage boy saved a billionaire when 15 specialists failed was not exactly a summer gold. One morning she intercepted him, visibly uncomfortable. "Kevin, I just wanted to thank you for showing us what we missed." Kevin offered her a polite smile. "We all make mistakes, Dr. Peterson. The difference lies in whether we choose to learn from them." The Cross case had become a national headline. Boy genius saves billionaire, unmasks conspiracy blazed across front pages. Universities competed for him with scholarships. TV networks begged for interviews. Kevin became a living reminder that brilliance has no boundaries. William Cross, fully recovered, established a $100 million education fund dedicated to invisible youth like Kevin, children whose gifts had been ignored because the world only saw their uniforms, not their minds. "That boy saved me when the best doctors in America failed," Cross said in one interview. "If there's another Kevin out there being overlooked, I want to find him." Kevin's mother, Diane, now the coordinator of the foundation rather than a cleaning lady, said proudly in her first TV appearance, "My son taught me that knowledge is never wasted. It just waits for the right moment to shine." Rebecca Cross, convicted of attempted murder, was sentenced to 25 years in prison. When asked in court how it felt to be outwitted by a teenager, she spat bitterly, "I didn't even see he existed." The phrase went viral, capturing how society's prejudice blinds it to extraordinary talent. Through it all, Kevin remained humble. In interviews, he credited observation and persistence, not any innate genius. "Anyone can learn these skills," he would say, "if they're given access to knowledge and the chance to use it." At 15, Kevin was studying medicine at Harvard, but he often returned to the hospital where it all began. Not as the invisible son of a cleaner, but as a respected consultant, saving lives with the same keen eyes that had once been overlooked. Dr. Peterson never fully recovered from the shame. She kept her position but lost the moral authority she once wielded. Her colleagues never let her forget the day a 14-year-old boy taught her medicine. Kevin's story proved that true genius doesn't need applause to exist. It simply waits for the right opportunity to change the world. Often, the ones society works hardest to erase are the very people who see what everyone else misses. And in the end, the most powerful revenge against prejudice isn't anger. It's success beyond anything the doubters ever imagined. Kevin had turned invisibility into strength, ignorance into opportunity, and proved once and for all that underestimating someone based on appearances is the gravest mistake of all.